Good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar hosted by TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship. My name is Davey Gerhard, and I'm the Executive Director for TENS. I get to beam across the continent and talk with y'all about once a month when we do these webinars. I love connecting with you all, and I love being able to present new information or best practices on stewardship. TENS, as its name implies, is a network of stewardship practitioners, and you all are a part of that network as well. I want to remind you that you have great skills and experience in stewardship, no matter if this is your first time thinking about running stewardship campaigns or if it's your 40th. We would love to include you in our network. And so please do share your experiences in the chat and in other ways. Let us know because we can all build from each other. What is happening and working in one congregation context often works in another. So by sharing information, we don't duplicate efforts across our very small church, as it turns out. We're big, and then we're very small when we realize how interconnected we all are with each other. So today we're going to be talking about that interconnectedness, and we're going to be talking about holistic campaigns. We often say in stewardship that we focus on time, talent, and treasure. And because of the way church budgets work and the time of year we're often doing our fundraising, we focus a lot on the treasure piece of our stewardship campaigns. But equally important are time and talent. And this is a theological statement as well as a practical one. Our congregations need all of us and all the ways that we can offer our gifts in order to succeed and deliver great programs for our neighbors. So today we're going to be focusing a little on that idea of holistic campaigns, how we bring all of ourselves into campaigning. Our learning objectives today, we're going to talk about, well, we hear about this 10%, this tithe, but is that enough? What is whole giving or holistic giving? We're going to talk a lot about volunteering, the way it builds community and helps people. And volunteering is increasingly important in our congregations as our budgets get smaller and our work stays the same or grows because of the acute needs of our neighbors. We realize that we have to draw on our members to carry out these ministries. And so we're going to talk a lot about volunteering and what it does for us and how to recruit volunteers. And then our talents. So that's different from our time. Our talents are those skills, some of them God-given, some of them acquired by years of practice or education or experience, those things that we have to share with the world. So we're going to talk about how to ask questions about what talents you have and how you might want to contribute them to your congregation. And finally, we're going to end by giving some best practices and tips on recognizing holistic giving and holistic givers in your congregation. Make certain that everybody is recognized and rewarded for the great ways that they participate. Let's get moving into our content. Last year, or maybe the year before, I was able to hear, before he retired from the Diocese of Olympia, I was able to hear Bishop Greg Rickel speak about tithing. He was speaking to a group of Province 8 stewardship folks, and we were listening to him, and he was saying, I'm really tired of talking about 10%. If we're Christians and we believe in the baptismal covenant and in the work that we are called to do, we're not called just to give 10%. We are all in for the message. We are all in for trying to change the world and communicate the good news and share the gospel with the world. And so that means that we have to think bigger than just our financial gifts, whatever those are. We need to think beyond that, how we offer our whole bodies, our minds, our souls, our hearts, our experience, and our bank accounts to make certain that our congregations are successful sustainable and that our neighbors get fed and cared for, and that we are doing the work that Jesus called us to do. But much of our teaching on the concept of giving our gifts comes from this idea of tithe. We have these scriptures in the Torah, mostly in our Levitical and Deuteronomical texts, that talk about these requirements to give 10% or to give the first of our land. And this was a concept that was so important to our early foundations that it kind of stuck through as we continued to think about ways that we give. So it's great that it's in the Torah. We can read that and mark, learn, and inwardly digest that. And it also doesn't tell the whole story. So we all hear these offertory sentences right before the gathering of the plates and the elements come down the aisle. The priest might say, maybe it concludes your announcement section and you're moving right into what happens at the altar. Often the priest will say, all things come of thee, O Lord. How do you finish that sentence? And of thine own have we given thee, right? It's kind of this knee jerk, we know this. And this comes from this concept of everything that we've been given comes from God to begin with. And so we acknowledge this at the offertory. Everything comes from you and we give it back to you in this moment. It's a beautiful idea, and it's very much focused on this notion of tithing. But let's take a look. Let's flip the script and move from Torah to from Torah to the law of Jesus and how Jesus sets up this concept. And we have this verse from Matthew where Jesus says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former." What's Jesus saying to the Pharisees or to us in this moment? Thank you for your gifts. So he's clear to acknowledge that people have made gifts of their things, the important thing that they're required to do. But then Jesus moves past that and into the next thing. Well, this is really what you should be focused on. Your gifts are lovely, but they need to accomplish something. They need to be, you need to focus on the real work of the church, of changing the world, of bringing peace and justice, forbearance, forgiveness, all those things that Jesus teaches us to do. That's the essence. Whether you make your faithful gift or not is nice, and Jesus makes certain that he recognizes that those gifts are important, but then says, and do more. And I think that that's where we're at with many of our stewardship campaigns. We want to make certain that our churches do receive the resources that they need. Of course, that's why we run these pledge campaigns at the time of year that we're formulating next year's budget. But at the same time, we want to make certain that people have an opportunity to recognize and then share their gifts and their talents with the world. So I think this invitation from Jesus moves us from the idea of mandated giving, tithing, and moves it into this idea of holistic giving. What more can you do? What more needs to be done? And it might require more than a tenth of your things. So with that in mind, here's another offertory sentence that we get at the beginning of that moment of the offertory. And so it flips that idea around. Walk in love as Christ loved us. And then it might finish in the way that we know. And so this understanding that there's more here than just giving, but there's a recognition that this is a journey, that it's an invitation from Jesus to do more, and that we walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself to us so that we can give back to others. The moment of the offertory is something that I've been kind of really focused on since I noticed in the pandemic, when we were all virtual all the time, the offertory wasn't happening in church services because there was no plate being passed. It was literally just a camera looking at the altar, and the things would happen up there, but there were no people in the pews. And so I really noticed that the offertory didn't have much oomph during the pandemic, during virtual services. And I started to miss it. And I thought, well, this is silly. Why am I missing this one part of the liturgy? There are many parts of the liturgy that are included. And to me, feeling that longing is not so much a part of ritual that I was missing, but the recognition that everything that we have, that God has given us, that we have accumulated, that we have worked so hard to obtain, we bring it down the aisle in that moment of drama at the offertory. Some congregations do it while singing the doxology, or others have other special music or a moment where it focuses our effort on that movement. And we bring the elements of communion, we bring our financial gifts. Maybe there are other things that we bring at that time if we've been collecting food or clothing, or other things that we're giving away to the community. Sometimes those things come down the aisle, and all of them are brought to the altar. And then we also come to the altar for the same reason. We gather, we are blessed, we are broken, and we are shared with the world that needs us. And that process of transformation that the offertory invites us into every week is such an important theological place in our liturgy. It happens, we don't often think of its importance, but I noticed when it was missing that something else was missing. That moment in which I feel then transformed by the Eucharist, by that action of consecration at the altar, where then I also am invited to go out into the world at the dismissal after it's all said and done, to move out into the world to do the work that we've been fed and nourished and taught to do. So I'm going to take us off of screen share in a moment and bring us back into the big room to have just a couple of minutes of Bible study together. And I want us to look at this passage from Matthew, and then maybe talk about it a little and notice the difference between the law and the spirit of the law, and see what Jesus thinks about just tithing. I wonder if someone would like to come off mute and volunteer to read Matthew 22:15 through 22 for us. Some brave soul interested in doing a little reading this morning?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap him in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him along with Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, "Whose head is this, and whose title?" They answered, "Caesar's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away.
Thanks, Mary, for reading that for us.
You're welcome.
So with that in mind, I'm going to invite us for a couple of minutes of Bible study, and I'd love to hear what jumps out at you from this passage. It's well known. We all know this story really well, but what does it make you think of, and what is Jesus trying to communicate to us? So raise your hand and come off mute and share some of your ideas on what Jesus might be saying to the Pharisees. You didn't know you were going to be put on the spot this morning. What does Jesus think about the law versus the spirit of the law?
That it's okay to pay taxes.
Well, some people might say it's inevitable, right? But yes, it is okay, right? And this is different, right? So what do we know about the first century and certainly Matthew's story? This comes from Matthew's gospel, the alleged tax collecting apostle who was shunned by polite society. Taxes were something that was a part of the dominion, a part of the oppressive government, and not helpful. So Jesus saying it's okay to pay taxes is one thing, right? So we have to participate in society. That's a lesson. Maybe not the one we all wanted to hear, but it's a lesson. What else does Jesus think about the law versus the spirit of the law?
It seems to me that Jesus is also saying that while we're part of the world and that reflected in paying taxes, we're also part of God and we have to live in our role as children of God.
Mm,
So he's saying we live in a duality. We're not all one or we're not all the other. We're in both. And we have to set our priorities based on that. So paying taxes, yeah, it's something you got to do, and but there's also what you have to give to God. Um, along the lines you've already been talking about, that we're bringing everything to the altar, and Jesus is saying, bring it all to God.
for sure, right? It's all part of the same system. It reminds us that as that one offertory sentence begins, all things come of you, and we're giving back. So it's all God's, right? Everything is God's, including the world that we're half a part of and half not a part of. I think that invitation to have a foot in each, in the spiritual realm or the world of the kingdom of God, and then in the world in which we live, where we are showing the way, the bridge between those two existences, those two places, those two ways of thinking. And I think that's an invitation. Jesus trying to make us aware that we are serving that role as that bridge. That's a beautiful idea, Winfield. Thank you. Any other ideas? Yeah, Louise, come off mute and share your ideas. There you
I'm
are.
a very simple person. So to me, it's just speaking to the fact that we have multiple responsibilities, all of which we are expected to fulfill, and we can't use a cop out for either that we're giving too much to the church so we don't have enough left over for other things, or we're giving too much to other things so we don't have enough left over for the church.
To find that balance, right? To find the way that makes sense. This is why often when when I make an ask of someone to participate in the pledge campaign, before they give an answer, I say, okay, we've talked about it. You know what we're trying to do here at our church. Here are the reasons that we're asking for your gift. Now go and pray about this. Talk with your family about it. Bring it to the dinner table. Somebody's off mute. If you could remute yourself, thank you. But bring these ideas home and bring them to your prayer and discern your gift so that you can make the best gift that's in balance with your household and your desire for outcome. I like that. Beautiful, Louise. Thank you for that idea. Any possible last thought before we move back into our teaching? This is one of those difficult parables, although we hear it all the time. We know this one, and this one enters society, right? It's in our culture. People who've never been to church know, give to Caesar what Caesar's. They might not know what it means or its subtext, but this is so much a part of our story, this teaching. I wonder sometimes that we don't spend more time on it because it's a hard teaching. Any other ideas? A brave soul willing to offer an idea or a thought? Well, thank you for that. You did very well participating in that um, that catch you off your guard Bible study. Thank you. We'll go back into sharing our screen and our presentation. So our gifts of treasure barely scratch the surface of what God is asking of us. This is one of the things that we learn when we study the scriptures, when we really look at what Jesus is telling us. We're called to go out into the world and change and heal and fix and love. And those are things that need more than our checkbooks, more than our bank accounts, more than our giving. They need all of our help. When we think about the ways that our neighbors need us, they need us to show up. They need a kind word. They need sometimes for us to listen. Sometimes they need direct support like food or clothing or shelter. Sometimes they need programs like adult daycare or tutoring programs or other things that provide support for difficult lives. So we need more than our money to do this. We're all in for the gospel, as Bishop Greg Rickel reminded us. We don't tithe, we give 100%. So what are these other T's? What is the other things? What are the other things that we're supposed to give? No stewardship program is complete without equally emphasizing our time and our talent. If we just think about our money, we're missing the other ways that Jesus calls us to be active and engaged in the world. And I think that this is a really important part uh, of our request to our members when we talk about our pledge campaigns. We want to ask them to share everything that they have. When we only ask for their money, it's one-sided. It feels transactional. It feels like what we care about is a budget. But our budget is our mission. Every dollar that we give to the church funds ministry. And we need to remind our members about this, that their the budget is about impact in the community. It's about doing ministry. It's about fulfilling the way that Jesus called us to be in the world. It's not just about keeping the lights on or keeping the building maintained, although those things are essential. It is about all that we do to serve the world and our neighbors. So when we take time to develop those other asks, the holistic stewardship ministry, we then can highlight the ways that we volunteer and share our ideas and our wisdom with the community. If you are using the TENS materials this year for your pledge campaign, which you can download from our website, the pledge card, we give you a sample pledge card. And on one side of it, it has your gift of treasure. And on the other side, it has your gifts of time and talent. And it asks 3 questions of you. What would you like to offer in the church? What would you like to do? So maybe a ministry you'd like to participate in or an activity. It asks you, what would you like to learn more about? So maybe you've always thought about serving on Altar Guild, but aren't ready to commit to it yet. So you could write that into your pledge card and get a call from the people who run Altar Guild. Maybe they could train you before you sign on the dotted line to do a year of Altar Guild. Or the third question, and I think this is a really important one that churches need to ask more of our members. What is a skill or a gift that you have that you'd like to share with your community. And so this invites people to dig deep into their own hearts and their own lives and their own experience to say, I love knitting. Maybe we should start a knitting ministry here. I knit, newborn blankets or wool caps or something like that. Maybe, maybe we should, I'm a great baker. I would love to make communion bread and teach others how to do that. What are the skills or the gifts that you have? So, when we ask those things and wrap them up in the pledge campaign, we're asking people at that moment to think more deeply about their commitment to our congregations. This is not transactional. We don't just want your gift of money. We want you to think about the ways that you have skills that you want to share and how can we develop or teach you new skills? That's why that second question, what would you like to learn more about? Maybe you'd like to learn more about leadership or teaching a class or learning a biblical language or doing EFM or some other sort of study. Maybe you'd like a book study or a men's group or a women's group or a seniors group or a children's group. These are the times that you can suggest what things the church might be doing and things that you can offer to help the church accomplish that. That's reciprocity. So that's not just one-sided. Sometimes our pledge campaigns can feel a little one-sided. What can you do for us? The church is also saying, what can we do for you? How can we make you whole people as well and give you things that you might need? So we're going to talk about some of the things that being a volunteer gives to us. Volunteering connects us to other people. It builds community. One of the things that I received some good advice when I was moving across the country, and it was join a choir and start volunteering somewhere. You'll make new friends in your new city. And I did both of those things. I followed this advice. I started singing in a church choir 26 years ago. I'm still a member of that congregation. They hooked me in, and I started volunteering at this food bank on Saturdays, and met my first group of friends in San Francisco when I moved from Boston. This was a really beautiful way to get to know new people. So our volunteers, our unpaid staff, are often the glue that holds a community together. And that's our internal, our church community, and our external, our neighbors and our friends and the people who live near us. Volunteering allows us to connect to our community in a way that we want to make it a better place. It's a shared vision of how we want to accomplish that. We meet like-minded people when we volunteer for something. And that makes, even small or mundane tasks fun because you're doing it in a community. It adds something to it. One of the reasons that I'm going to talk so much today about volunteerism, and this hangs off a webinar that we did in May when we talked about attracting and retaining younger members, our millennial and Gen Z members. And one of the things we taught in that webinar was volunteerism is the hook that is going to drive new member growth in congregations more and more as our new members become younger and younger, as the new generations coming up see church. They may not have come to church with their parents or grandparents. They might be missing a generation there from my Gen X generation, which largely rejected church in many ways. Didn't bring our kids to church like other generations have. And so people who are young, who are Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who will follow them, I hope we come up with another name for these. But anyway, that's what they are right now. As they come into church, the question they're asking is not, is this a great community to join? What's your ritual like? What's your stained glass like? The questions they're asking are, how are you changing the world? And how can I be a part of that? They want to come in as volunteers doing something for the community as maybe a community service center would. And then they start to see, oh, there's a worshiping component to this. Oh, there's a group of faithful people who are doing this because they're called and shaped and formed to do this. So I'm spending time talking about volunteering because it's one of the gifts, one of the T's that we talk about in stewardship, but also because it is going to be the way that our churches grow. If we're going to get into this and grow in our future, we've got to get good at creating, offering, and supporting volunteer opportunities for new volunteers in our community. So we're going to talk about that more as we move through this. Volunteering, it helps you make friends. As I shared in my own story, we make bonds with people because we're devoted to something that we have in common. We're doing this work. We feel like we're making an impact together. And it's a shared activity. It breaks down some barriers. You don't have to have awkward conversations with people because you already have something in common, right? You've shown up to do this task and you can start in on other questions and start getting to know each other. And it ties you to a place, right? For me, it anchored me to my new city of San Francisco. I started to get to know the issues, the people, the concerns, the ideas that formed them. And that was really important to me as I came to know a new place and a new group of people. I also found out where things were happening and how to get things done. Because when we're volunteering with something, we make connections in the community. Oh, that's where you go to do this kind of activity or find that thing in a grocery store or accomplish this task. Your new network of friends will connect you to places. And this, imagine if our churches could also be doing this with new members, connecting them with their community, with the work, and tying it into the message of Jesus calling us to change the world and to go out and be more. Volunteering teaches you about yourself and it helps you acquire or perfect, hone, maybe another word, skills that you might need or want to use in your life. So I think not everybody is outgoing. Some people might be shy, but volunteering breaks down some of those barriers, helps people break out of their shell, exposed to new ideas. Uh, that question on the pledge card, what would you like to know more about, is that entrance point to saying, I want to, I, these are some ideas that I have for things I might want to accomplish in my own life, or maybe the church needs, and maybe I need to learn more or develop some skills or training in order to accomplish them. Volunteerism pushes us to develop new skills because we're doing it for this reason that's about giving to the world. So when we try these things, it improves us as well. It builds our own social and relationship skill. Gives you a chance to perfect those or practice them or do that. I learned much about being a leader in church from being a leader in church, being invited into it. I was invited to be in EFM and then education for ministry, a 4-year course on sort of Bible and church theology. And then I was invited to be a mentor. And then I was invited to serve on the vestry. And then I was invited. And then I found that I could stand up in front of a congregation and talk and share ideas and bring others into an idea. So this is all because the church just kept saying, will you think about this? Will you do more of this? Will you learn this new skill? And, you know, I love that about my community that formed me. Took this young person who's no longer a young person and turned him into something that the church needed. It's a beautiful, wonderful gift that church has, I think. Volunteering brings us closer to God because it is about altruism, because it's about sharing the most precious resource we have, which is not our treasure, but our time. By sharing that with other people, we get close to that message of Jesus when he really gets down and focuses in on us and says, go out and serve the world, go out and teach others, go out. He keeps pushing us away and drawing us in at the same time. Go out and do it. Come back for nourishment. Go out and do it again. This is that gift of Jesus, and it helps us get to know the person of Jesus, who was about radical change, changing the society, turning things upside down, uh, because he wanted to serve others. Healing on the Sabbath, or inviting unclean people to sit at his table, or hanging out with people that no one else in society wanted to be with. These examples of Jesus give us the example of how breaking down those barriers and having conversations with people that we wouldn't otherwise meet or talk with can be life-changing. The first time I ever worked at a sort of inner city food bank, giving away food and sort of basic medical equipment, hygiene equipment, I would say, to folks who were experiencing homelessness, was a truly frightening experience, because I didn't know, what are these people who aren't like me, who look a little different than I do, might be a little dirty, or a little unkempt, or a little not having cohesive conversation. What are they going to say to me? What are they going to want from me? What if I get into a conversation with them and they ask something of me? And all those things happened on my first day. And what was beautiful was that I could have a conversation with them, right? They wanted to just talk about the things that we were experiencing, or maybe just the the beautiful day, and the fact that they had an apple and a toothbrush and some clean socks, and they were kind of feeling good about that, and they wanted to share other parts of their life with me. So what happened in those moments? I connected with people. We connect with others when we are willing to break down the barriers, and Jesus invites us into those uncomfortable, awkward moments, because that's where transformation happens. And not transformation in the other person, although I hope that person was transformed by the food and the hygiene that we were able to give away that day. But I was transformed. I was transformed in saying, this is something I can do, or this is a conversation I'm able to have, or this is the compassion I'm willing to understand in myself and develop and extend to someone else. In serving others, we not only model Jesus, but we also meet Jesus in the people we serve. So we encounter Jesus' love as we share our love or our lives with others. And this is I think this is the genius in Jesus asking us to go out and do this work, because he knows, and the church then comes to understand, that when we're asked to go, we bring it back. We bring the teaching and the love that we receive and share back. And it's this beautiful cycle of gratitude and acceptance and learning. What a radical way to build a religion and a world view. And it all brings us close to God. Volunteering is like actually physically good for us. It helps us connect or reconnect with the things or the skills, the tools we have that get lost in our workaday busy lives when we're focused on school, work, family, performance, our anxieties, our fears, our drive for success, all of those things that we focus our time on. Volunteering kind of brings us out of those places and into a place where we can put that aside and focus on, what do others need from me? How can I give of myself? How can I share? That feels good. When we feel good, all kinds of other great things happen. Like we reduce anxiety, we breathe more deeply. I mean, like there are like health benefits to volunteering and working in community that make us feel less anxious and inside ourselves and more open and willing to share. That's a beautiful gift of self and body. So when we commit to being in a time and place where we can take a pause, or maybe we know we have to show up at 4 o'clock to do our shift in the tutoring center at our church, right? So it helps keep us on a schedule and it gives us a commitment, not in a way, hopefully, that produces anxiety, but in a way that produces an opportunity. We put away our other distractions, right? When we're focused on serving someone who really needs our time, we can't be having a whole email exchange with our boss on our phone or trying to deal with other things that come up. We put those things away and we focus on the person or the task that needs our attention. What a gift of freedom that is. And we engage, we step out of ourselves, and then we reflect. Hopefully, we reflect on whatever we experienced at the end of the day, or when we meet as volunteers again, or when we go home and we think about what our day was like. We reflect on what happened, how we impacted others. It feels really good to have impact. One of the things that I think is most important in stewardship and in our conversation about our gifts to the church is that we bring back those stories of impact, of transformation into our churches when we've had them. For example, when you work in a food ministry, being able to say, we served 100 meals to families this week. And I really enjoyed, making the soup or making the bread or setting the table or whatever your contribution to that was. And then telling that story in church, maybe at announcements or writing it up in the newsletter, talking not just about what you did, it's not a diary, but like, oh, excuse me, how it made you feel, or what you encountered, or how you were challenged, or your story of impact. And at the end of the day, people were fed and you were transformed. That helps us make the connection in church between sharing our gifts and changing the world, or or to be more transactional, it makes the connection between our money and the meaning of our money. It transforms our gifts into ministry and mission and shares that idea that our gifts have impact. And impact, change, is what it's about. Bringing those stories back in testimonials, in videos, in written or oral ways is a really important part of our stewardship. And we need to remember that that's that reciprocity. We need to do it and then talk about it, because talking about it leads others into it. So volunteering also teaches us some of those virtues that we need about patience, about kindness, about compassion. When somebody, when you are serving somebody and they're being pushy or they're having anxiety, you can't give that back to them, right? I mean, they need you to be in an open way, not that you're unprotected, but that you are a safe place for them to experience what they are experiencing. And you're that kind face, that direct connection with them, that place of stability. Maybe you can't, we're just called in a different way than we might behave in our professional lives or in our academic lives or with our families. When we are serving people who need us and we're connected to that, it helps us develop those skills of our heart that we so need to share and develop. So that's our time. And our time, I think, is, our deepest gift to the church. And our churches, as you know, once you say yes, sometimes you're in for lots and lots of time commitment, because the church will keep asking more. Have good boundaries. You can't say yes to everything. But time is one of the gifts that we're asked to give. Talent is the other. And I want to talk a little bit about talent because I think it's the one that we forget the most. We're really good at treasure. We're pretty good at talking about time. We don't always talk about talent. And when we do, we often glom it together with time. But talent is something very different. Talent is about us saying, what is it that I do really well, that comes easily to me, that I'm good at, that I studied, and what can I use from that lifetime experience to share or improve or change my church? These are really big questions. And I think we should use this exact list or one like it in our congregations when we're doing stewardship work to say, what are the various ways that you get affirmation from the world that you are on a right path, that you have some skills that people develop. So, what do my coworkers compliment me on? So that's something that you could say, well, I always get complimented for how well I run a meeting. Well, maybe that's a skill you have to lead a committee in church. Oh, I know committee leadership does not sound like an exciting ministry to you, but if you're really good at it, you could bring something because we've all been in committees that aren't well run. So maybe that's your gift, right? But what is it that you get complimented on in your life? What, if your friends were asked, what does Davy do really well? They would say he throws a really great dinner party. So maybe, ask Davy to do the potluck, ask him to coordinate, and, assign the dishes and ask people to coordinate it because Davy will get that job done. I do, actually. It's my favorite church ministry. Or what do I bring to a team, right? I'm a good listener. I'm the one that always challenges the idea. We need people who challenge the status quo. Jesus did it all the time. We need people, maybe I'm the one who tries to make peace and bring ideas back together. I have a coworker who's excellent at summarizing what just happened. And she'll do it in a way that says, after a conversation, she'll say, so what I heard, or to test my understanding, and then she'll say what she heard. And we all say, yep, that's what we got from that 20 minutes of conversation. Somebody was able to distill it down, and now we have somewhere to go from it, right? So that's a skill. We need these things in the way that we run our lives and our churches because they depend on us. We are the ones called to do this work. We're the ones that show up to church. So ask these questions. Do it in small group or find a way to introduce work like this to your stewardship campaigns and really ask people, and then be ready when asked, ready to receive their answers. Because another thing that I think we do in church that misses the mark is we often ask people to tell us what they want, a suggestion box, if you will, or tell us what they're good at, or sign up for something. And then we forget to call them and invite them into the ministry. So somebody said, I really want to get on the reading rota, but the person who puts together the reading rota either didn't get that message or still calls on the same regulars and doesn't include new people. So that's some training on who runs ministries in your congregation, how you assign these roles. Make sure that if you ask people for feedback, ask people if they want to get involved, that you then have a way to follow up so that they can get involved. The worst thing, I think, is to ask someone to participate and then not give them a job to do or give them a role or a way to reflect that. It says, I don't respect the time and the talent that you're offering. But if you still cash the check they're giving, then you're really sending a message. What do I care about most from you? So don't let your members think that all you want from them Is there financial gift you would like more? Obviously, like financial gifts, not everybody has the same time or the same talent or the same amount of it they can or want to share. And we respect giving at all levels in all ways. So if somebody only has one task they can do and it's once a year, right, make sure that, they're the one that builds the Christmas pageant set because they do it really well and they like to do that. And the rest of the year, they don't want to be called on. Okay, well, I know you can do this. And maybe please invite someone else to help you so that when you can no longer do this ministry, someone else can pick it up. Our altar guilds work this way. They have been some of the same heroic people in the sacristy for a long time, and they forget to invite others into this ministry so that other people can learn about it. It's a beautiful, beautiful ministry serving in the sacristy and getting things ready for church. But few are called. So when people identify that that's something they want to do, make certain that there's follow-up, a way to get them involved in it. When we are asked, what talents do you have? Or we're asked to dig deep and think about ways that we might want to serve the church or offer our gifts to the church, we can sometimes oversell. We sometimes get really caught up and maybe think that we're like on an interview, or maybe we want to really impress our friends in our congregation with how much skill we have or how much we're willing to do. In other words, we overcommit. And often when we overcommit, we then underdeliver because we just don't have the time or the bandwidth to do everything we said yes to. So make certain that you are looking at the people who volunteer and saying, do I really think that they have the time and energy to do this? I'm going to keep my eye on them. That's not to say we kick people out of something, but we might say, I've noticed that, you signed on to do this ministry, but you're never there to do it. We're always covering it. When you are put on the reading rota, you then aren't able to show up and other people cover it. That's fine. We want you to read when you can, but maybe there's something else you can do if you're never able to be here for this ministry. So beware of either overselling yourself, or when you see somebody really eager and raising their hand for everything, it might bring down problems down the line. And what happens often in church, because it's not a club, we don't kick people out, and it's not a job, so we don't have performance reviews, but we can make people feel uncared for or disrespected if we don't fully honor the commitments they make and give them a way to do that honestly and easily. So avoid overselling your talent, or notice when somebody is. It's not a competition. We want people to make sustainable choices and how much time and ability they have. If you notice that you have someone who is kind of new and they're signing on to everything, it might be time to say, well, what's the first thing you want to do? What's a new idea that you have? And then let's do that for a year and then, join these other things. Help them get acclimated rather than inundated. Sometimes we are too specific in what we want. I want to teach a class on biblical Greek on Tuesday nights. Well, I don't know that we have anyone on Tuesday night that wants to learn biblical Greek from you. That's a great skill. I wish I knew more and could teach it as well, but maybe there's another way you can offer that. Can we do something different? Thank you for that. Or I want to teach floral arranging and I have this really particular way that I'm going to teach it and do it. And then all of our flowers will look like this. Well, thank you. That's a gift. Maybe they'll just look like that when you do the flowers, but other people will have their own creativity. So sometimes we get really specific in our gifts because we know certain things really well and we want to share it. But is that right for the community? Think about that when people say it or when you're trying to offer it. And our greatest trap is that we don't have any talent to share. People don't really want to know what I have, or people don't really want what I have to give. I'm a good baker, but maybe I'm not the best. Oh, somebody else makes cakes much better than I do. Or they couldn't possibly want me to teach breathing through reading, right? This is the whole thing, right? The way we arc our breath when we're reading a passage, it can change, right? And so maybe that's something that you know. You're a voice coach, you trained as a singer. Maybe you want to help people be better readers or better singers, right? Whatever. I'm just pulling things out. But these are things that you might think people don't want to know this, but maybe they do. Maybe this is something that if you offered it, people would say yes to. Don't reject yourself. Put yourself out there, and people will often be attracted. Maybe it's just one or two people. I spoke with a woman at my congregation who wanted to start a writing workshop. She noticed that lots of people wrote in different ways, essays, short stories, magazine articles, things like that. And she wanted to start this monthly group where people shared their writing together. What a great idea. And, she had like 3 people who signed up, and she was really disappointed. Well, only 3 people signed up. I'm like, that's pretty good, right? So start there. And 3 people sharing their writing every month will turn into more, or those 3 people will be really energized by this. Takes nothing to work on this ministry together, just do it. So great, keep going. So we often think too little of ourselves, or that people won't sign up for what we want. That's not true. People will. So here's a little ritual I think that we can use in our congregation. We can teach this practice to others, and we can use it as a part of our time and talent ministry. We can we remember first, we start with gratitude where all things start, and thank God that we have these gifts. Maybe acknowledge the ones that have been innately given, the ones that we've been given the opportunity to work toward, the ones that we've developed in jobs or in school, and kind of name them. This is kind of like counting your blessings. This is naming your gifts and thanking God for this is a humbling experience, and it asks you to really dig deep. Don't be modest. These are the gifts that you have given me. I am grateful for them. And then while we're in that mode of prayer and thanksgiving, say, well, how can I best use this, God? Direct me. Where are these gifts needed? We have the great theological arc that where our work lies and the needs of the world are met. This is where ministry happens. This is an important teaching. And so we all have a place where we can give, and the world has things that it needs. And it's making the match between those two things. This is our job as stewardship folks who want to teach the practice of time and talent, help people pray for guidance. How can I use these great gifts? And then give people ways to practice. So sounds like you have some gifts to share. Here's an opportunity in church. Here's a way to do it. You want to lead morning prayer? You want to have a dog walking ministry? Do you want to work in the garden? We have so many jobs to do. There are so many things you could get into here. What's your place? Or where is your work? What can we help you do? So practice that skill. You've thanked God for it and recognized your gifts. You've prayed for guidance. Now you need some practice. Learn it, perfect it, change it, tweak it, refine it, get feedback. How am I doing? This is really important as well. So this is one of the skills that we can teach. We can always go and do Bible study. This helps us frame this work as biblical or as spiritual. and look at some of these scriptures. I've given you two. There are any number of others throughout the body of scripture that give us ideas and meditative thoughts on how we might think about our gifts and how we might put them into practice. So, thinking of the Psalm, I praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. And then we have from James, every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from God. This reminder that you put these gifts into us, you planted these seeds, you have created them in us, and I am the vessel, I'm the channel, I'm praying for guidance. Let me use these. And then share. So this is the last place that we go in this particular exercise. We've started with gratitude and we've ended with sharing. So now go out and share these gifts that you have developed, that you've identified, that you've worked on, that you've meditated about, and now you can share them. I think if we use this as a model in our time and talent ministry of our stewardship campaigns, we can really teach people something about how to prayerfully discern and think about their gifts. What I hope comes from an effort like this is people who put thought into what they want to give. And then for the church to be able to say, we receive those gifts and we have a place for them and we'll work with you where you're at. I want to finish before we move into your questions and your comments. I want to finish with making certain that you have time and effort and resources put into recognizing your time and talent. All of your volunteers, from everything, from your ushers to your Sunday school teachers, to your choir people, to the people who work in your outside ministries and your inside ministries, they all need to be recognized. So find the ways to do that. I think it's nice when a congregation can take like maybe one group a week or a month, depending on how your ministries shake out, and say, we're highlighting the altar guild. Let's, pray for them. Here are the people who do it. This is what they do. We are really grateful. We wouldn't be able to do this without them. And, bring them up or have them stand or recognize them in some way. And then here are our ushers. Here are the people who work in the garden. Here are the people you never see who work in the office. And they do this, or the sextons who clean our building. And they're purposely not here on Sunday mornings because they're doing other things during the week. So, how do you recognize the people who make church happen for you, who run your ministries? Bring them up, thank them when it's appropriate, give them tools or gifts or appreciation. And then the other part of recognizing volunteers is saying, what more do you need from us in the way of formation or training? Churches sometimes have a little budget, and dioceses sometimes have a little budget to do trainings or to send people to trainings. Maybe your diocese has a ministry day or a training day once a year or twice a year or quarterly. Take advantage of those things. And, yeah, it takes maybe a Saturday or a weeknight of extra time for your members to go to those things. But then they might, they might learn something. So they might have them for Sunday school teachers or for, lay Eucharistic ministers or readers or things like that. Take advantage of those kinds of trainings or those certifications or those formation opportunities to help your volunteers get even better at their jobs. And if there isn't a diocesan training available for their particular thing, say, well, what do you need from us? How can we help you? How can we give you feedback and get even better at this ministry that you share with us? Your volunteers provide amazing service, support, and programs that enable you to function. Without them, you wouldn't be able to do church. We wouldn't be able to do much of what we are able to accomplish. The nonprofit independentsector.org looks at volunteerism across the nation and actually assigns if a living wage that included benefits and all that were attached to an hourly wage for a volunteer, it would be $33.40 an hour that you would have to pay someone in order to give them a living wage for the hours that they graciously and generously give you. You can go to this website here and look up your state and see what it is. It varies greatly, but the national average is $33.40. I'll give you this slide and you'll have that webpage to go to. But this is not so that we can track money that we're not spending, but know that if you have, 50 volunteers in your church working on ministries, the thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of service you are getting from these people who are willingly donating their time and their talent to your congregation to make this happen. I hate to bring it all back down to money, but sometimes that's the thing that makes sense to us when we see just how much of a gift and an impact our members have by doing this beautiful gift of volunteering their time and their talent. So use this. It's a great little number, and you can look up your state and see what your average is. All right. I'm going to end by reminding you all that you are members of TENS and that this year's theme for our stewardship package is Walk in Love. It reminds us that we're all on a journey of love with each other, and that giving is an opportunity to share in that walk of love with others and to accompany people on their walk. We provide resources in English and in Spanish, and they're completely customizable. Donate, use them, adapt them to your own congregation's use, and they're ready to go. On the website, all you have to do is download them and plug them in, adapt them as you need. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pull us back into our group, and I'm going to invite you to ask any questions that are lingering or provide any feedback or ideas on ways that you teach or train or include volunteers in your congregation. What are some of the things you're doing or some of the things you want to know more about? Alexandra, you've got your hand raised. Come on off mute.
All right, thank you. My question has to do with how to connect people willing and interested in contributing their time with the ministries that so that they don't get lost in the shuffle. So what structures work within a church office? Are there spreadsheets or like Microsoft Forms or a dedicated staff person to connect the parishioners who want to contribute time and talent to the specific ministries? Because that's kind of where I see people get lost.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
wondering if you have any specific tools.
And that's exactly the thing. People get lost. They say, "Oh, I'm interested in serving," and then no one connects them with the ministry, right? And that's not because we're lazy or rude. It's because life happens, right? So here's what we do in my congregation. People fill out their pledge card either online or in the mail or in the plate, however it comes in, paper or virtual. And there's a Google spreadsheet that the person who reads those, and it's only one, the treasurer is the one that gets all that information, and she enters that in. She enters the financial pledge on one side, and then the time and talent in a spreadsheet that can be shared without the financial data to the parish administrator, who then filters it out to the altar guild, to the garden committee, to the reading mentor group to the food ministry, whatever. So there's a way then to say, you've got a live one here, someone who hasn't signed up for this ministry. You might want to give Davey a call. He indicated that he's willing to do this, wants to know more. So that's the feedback loop. Now that's all labor intensive, right? That's manual, that's one person, and we're a congregation with 75 pledging units, so that's manageable for one person. When you're dealing, it looks like you're at St. Mark's Cathedral with a larger community. What are the ways that you automate that? What are the ways, or who has access to that can help that? I think having a spreadsheet that's shareable, that as many people who have access to that data can update and share it back with the folks who are doing those ministries. Just eliminate bottlenecks where you can. Time and talent information isn't as private as treasure information. So, you can share that with whole groups or, with a larger group of people without feeling like you're compromising privacy or security or things like that. So, find the way to do that. Google spreadsheets are really great because you can share them and have permission to edit or share or view as you want. That's the way that we do it, and I think it's a way that works. There are some churches that use database work to do that. If you have Realm or other kinds of database where you can track people and not just their gift, but also, you can use those fields to say what other ministries they're a part of, and then through permissions, depending on the number of licenses you have, you can share that information with the ministry heads or with at least another person who can then communicate that. So if you have a database that tracks that kind of stuff, it's another way to do that. My overarching thinking about that is eliminate bottlenecks because churches have great bottlenecks. And so try to eliminate those. Thank you for that question. Gina, you've got your hand up.
Yes, hi. Thank you
Hi.
for today. It's very, very helpful. I have a question. I'm a priest in charge, and I'm in Danbury, Connecticut. And I'm on here also with some parishioners. My question is this: you mentioned this really key line, which was our budget is our mission. You said our budget is our mission. It funds our ministries, right? It funds what we do in the world. My question is about vision, because I feel like this is my first stewardship season as a priest in charge. I feel like as we move into it, we need to convey to our parish our vision, because I feel like our ask is around our vision. And I know that that's probably a whole different webinar, vision versus mission and stewardship, but I just wondered if you could say something about that. And then also how explicitly we can name, when you said our gifts barely scratch the surface, that part, and are we all in, and our gifts barely scratch the surface, to me that felt daunting. I felt like that could turn people off to hear it that way, because they feel like, well, wait, what do you mean? I give so much, we're barely scratching the surface, I'm doomed. And so how do we name, and can we explicitly name what our gifts, how they are scratching the surface? So flipping it to the positive.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
Imagine that, flipping it to the positive, using some appreciative inquiry. I appreciate that. Thank you for that question. So the answer to the first question about, how do we share those ideas? How do we talk about our vision in our budget? So I would say, if you've never explored doing a narrative budget, it's a great tool. And on the TENS website, we have a whole article and a toolkit on how to transform your Excel line item budget into a narrative budget, What a narrative budget does is it spreads out those fixed costs like salary, utilities, insurance, maintenance over your identified ministry buckets. So I use the word bucket, you could use silo, you could use area, whatever you wanted to use. But so if you do worship, children and family outreach, pastoral care, I don't know, other things that you formation, other things you might include as your core ministries. And then you spread out your salary over those X number of areas, your salary and benefits, the amount of space that is used. So like divide out we need our space to do all these ministries. So X amount of utilities, X amount of insurance, X amount of building maintenance is prescribed to those ministry areas. And now what you're funding is not a line item budget. You're funding your ministries, your vision. This is how we want. And then, so that's a piece. And then the other piece is to share how our mission is the vision of this congregation, defining the change that we want to see in the world. I mean, that takes some theology and some connection points. And you might create a whole, as you say, it's a whole nother webinar, but you might create the way that you want to say what we do, our pastoral work, our outside work, our inside work, our worship. This is how it establishes our vision for how we want to see ourselves in the world and what is the world calling us to be, and make that connection. At the heart of stewardship, I think always is making the connection between what people are giving and what they want to see change in the world, and draw that line as clearly as possible, because that's what inspires us. Hopefully we're not inspired just by our budget, right? That's not exciting. But what is exciting is what our budget allows our church to do. So that's, I think that's how I would talk about vision and mission, and make certain that you're not just talking about funding your budget. You're talking about what your budget allows your church to do. In terms of being daunted by asking to give everything, I realize that that's an in-your-face statement, right? Give it all. And we don't want that to feel like sometimes in stewardship, we say these things without meaning them. Give till it hurts, or, keep, but we don't want to share that message. We want something that's a little more approachable, that it helps people identify what they have and how they want to see that work in the world be. And so, I think using that last calculation of hours and budget, and what's the hourly rate of a volunteer, helps you say, look at what we are getting. When you give your time and talent to the church and you're giving that for free, we're not spending all this money that it would take to do that work. And I realize, again, money is the worst way to communicate, but it is a way that we all understand. And since we're talking about budgets at this moment anyway, it's a good way to draw that comparison or that connection with folks. Your time and your talent are worth something to this church, not just a value of money, but they're allowing us, in that same vein that your budget allows your mission to happen, your volunteerism allows your mission to happen. And without it, it would be impossible. We don't have those tens of thousands of dollars in our budget to do what we're not paying volunteers to do, right? So it's a way to help ease that give it all perspective, and to start looking at it, perhaps it's not giving 100%, but holistic stewardship, holistic giving. I am giving not just from my checkbook, but from my heart and my mind and my body and the ways that I can share. I hope that helps. Congratulations on your first stewardship campaign as a priest in charge. Kurt, I see you've got your hand up. Thanks for waiting.
Yes, thanks. As always, Davey, this is great stuff. My question has to do, based on your experience, any thoughts you have on how to include time and talent during the pledge campaign without losing focus on financial giving.
Right?
Fully
Because at the end of the
grasp
day,
and understand the concept of it's all together, and believe that the more time and talent you give, the more engaged you are, the more you see the work and the change, and you're going to give more. It's going to be a result. But when you get down to the practical nuts and bolts of it, if you give people 3 things to do versus 1 thing to do, the fear is that that takes them away from that 1 thing.
right.
And
I hear your question, and everything that I've learned ever in fundraising is have a simple, easy, single call to action, right? The more calls to action you have, the more confusing it is for the donor, right? And so here I am saying, as the stewardship guy, have 3 calls to action, right? But first of all, I think if we start to pitch and teach the idea of holistic campaigns, that it's not 3 different asks, it's 1 ask. What are you giving from your treasure? What are you giving from your time? What are you giving from your talent? And it's 1 campaign. It's 1 idea. It's 1 thing. That starts to at least minimize that desire that we have to separate them. No, it's 1. Because in essence, as you said, when you're giving of your time and your talent, it's also hopefully emphasized also or reinforced by your financial gift. And all those things work with each other to accomplish the vision and mission of your congregation. But I think what you say is also true in that the finance committee said we need to raise this much money, or the vestry, whoever's told the stewardship committee what their goal should be. And you have that pressure, right? We got to close these gifts because we do need to stay open. We do need to offer these services. We don't have reserves to rely on. This is the money that we have, and we've got to raise it. And so I think, again, that tool of here's what a volunteer is worth helps understand, well, this is money we're not asking you for, right? Because you're doing that other piece of the work, and we're really grateful for that. Or that idea that the other way of looking at that, I think, is to bring in stories of impact into your campaign. So if you do testimonials, at the announcement time, somebody stands up and says their 2-minute spiel on why they give to the church and why they support the church. Maybe this year invite in more impact stories about volunteering as well. So yes, I make my financial gift to the church, and I'm inviting you to join the campaign as well. But, my husband and I volunteer on Saturdays at the whatever, or my kids grew up doing this and they loved it. And it was a way that we were able to engage our family in this other ministry that we do here at the church, or those stories of impact. I had this great connection with someone at the food ministry, and they told me what this box of food meant to their family and how they were able to supplement their food scarcity budget or whatever, right? Food security budget. So look at stories that bring that impact in of time and talent as well as treasure. And then that just keeps underscoring that they're all related. Don't deny the fact that we have to raise budget, but also we have to raise our volunteer awareness as well, because that's essential. Thanks for that question, Kurt. Chris asked a question that I've used the term pledge card, but the template that I use is promise. Thank you for that. I'm agnostic on whether pledge or promise feels better or worse. I use them interchangeably. We went with your promise on our pledge card because we kept getting feedback that pledge is a scary word. Promise feels a little better. You have the word, or you have the document in Word, so you can change that however you like, whatever fits your. But I have this story that a young woman in a congregation who came up to me after a training and said, I don't fill out pledge paperwork. I don't fill out a pledge, but I do give. I give, monthly. I'm on a recurring donation, but I don't like to fill out pledge card. I said, okay, that's fine, but why? I'm curious. Tell me why. And she said, I have student debt. I have credit card debt. And I don't want to sign another debt contract. And certainly not to my church. And I was like, well, it's not really a debt contract. It's not like that. And then where she was coming from was, I'm already buried, but I do want to be generous as I can be with my church. I just don't want to call it a pledge. And so I called it a promise here. I think you can call it whatever language you need, and try to make that distinction. The word pledge can be scary to some people. You're right. So think about that, how you talk about it. I'm trying to change my language away from pledge, yet it's so ingrained in the way we do stewardship campaigns in church that promise hasn't completely taken over my vocabulary yet. Gina shares with us that she made a stewardship card for children in her last parish, and the kids illustrated us. That's so cool, and made their own pledges, right? I think when kids make a pledge, whether it's 25 cents a week or $1 a month or whatever they're doing, right? That is so cool. And it's just, discipleship is another part of stewardship. And when we can grow lifelong givers who understand the relationship between what they see in church and what they give of themselves and make that connection, start it young and reinforce it positively, we're making then disciples, lifelong givers. So congratulations. I love that idea. By the way, TENS is next year developing some youth resources for stewardship, some godly play stories that you can use, and some other tools for youth and young adult stewardship. So look for those next year. We didn't get them ready for this year, but we're developing it because discipleship is a really important concept for us. Thank you. Thank you. We are at our time and I'm aware of that, but is there a last question or comment folks would like to bring about? Phoebe asks, how can we learn more about what other parishes do with the theme? I will start, this is the time of year when people start sending me, here's what we did with your logo, or here's what we did with your theme. Phoebe, you shared what your church did. You had your own walk of love, didn't you? Phoebe's not on camera.
Yeah, we did. We've had a wonderful creative time, and with that theme, etc. I don't want to take the time now, but I'd like to know what other people do that will inspire us too.
Great. People are sending me those ideas and I'll start posting them. Are you all following us on Facebook? Like us if you're not, and I will send out the link when I send out the materials. We'll start posting some stories as stewardship season approaches and gets underway on how other congregations are using the theme and what they're doing with it. It's great. We introduce the theme and then you all run with it, which I love. So thank you for sending what you did, Phoebe, and thank you all for the ways you are taking the language and the theme and making it your own and going out and doing this work. Alexa says no Facebook. Sorry, I know Facebook is awful for lots of other reasons, but there we are. We're trying to get away. Is there anything else I can share with you that will help your campaign? I hope you'll all show up in 2 weeks' time, Saturday the 24th, when we do our last webinar before stewardship season begins, before those fall pledge campaigns. We'll be meeting at the same time, 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern. And we'll do a webinar on best practices for 2024 campaigns and give you a pep talk before you turn into September. So thank you so much for your participation today. Thanks for being members. Call on me anytime you want, and I will be sending you all of this information that we've gone over today. Blessings on your campaign, and thank you for the hard, beautiful work of stewardship that you do in your congregations. Farewell.